Okay, for the train body, of course, we want to do a new standard part. Another thing very important, and we never want to use the default name. So I'm going to right away, as soon as I create the file, I want to make sure I'm putting this in my train 2014 folder, and I'm going to call it train body. Okay, the other thing, as we go through those videos, it's very important that you not just watch the video, that you also have the train body and dimensions in front of you. Some of the dimensions will be harder to see on the screen, and you'll need to pull them off of your document. So that's one thing that's very important. And the other thing is, some of these steps you probably could build most of the train body on your own, although you're having to now pull together all these different skills that we've learned into building the part. The only more challenging thing, that's something that we haven't done much yet, is working with work planes to drill the hole in the top. So let's go back. The other thing to realize is, how are you going to build the train? Okay, what is your what orientation are you going to build the different parts in? So of course I want to, when we start a sketch, you want to always think about that. So for the train body, we'll start out with a rectangle that's 2 inches wide by 0.875 inches tall. Okay, and then E, or finish sketch to extrude, and I want to make sure I go back, and I'll go ahead and go the full length of the train. Okay, so that gives me basically the full length of the train. Next, I'm going to start with a sketch on the front. And let's go ahead and put a center point on there. Make sure it's in the center, make sure that's exactly 1 inch. And then that also needs to be 1.375 above the bottom of the train. And then we could just do a circle, and the radius of that circle is 0.75, so the diameter will be 1.5. And I want to just go ahead and extrude that, joining, and go ahead and go the full distance. Okay, and that's okay that, you know, we have that barrel on the front where the locomotive is. Let's go ahead and flip around to the back side of the train. Although it's the front and back, I want to continue to build it in the orientation that I'm going to do. And then you'll notice that on the back of the train there's an arch there, and it's centered off of a hole. So what I might want to do is go ahead and drill that hole for the hitch peg first. So then I can use that geometry make sure that's an inch from the side and 0.375 from the bottom. And then I could go ahead and drill the hole there. Diameter of the hole, you'll notice, is 1/4 inch diameter, 1/2 inch deep. And let's see, that's just a blind hole. Okay, so once I have the hole, then I'll go ahead and throw another sketch on that back plane. And what that gave me this little point here that will allow me to use that center point for this rounded part on the top. So I'm going to go ahead and select the center point arch, and I'm going to make it bigger than it needs to be. And then let's go ahead and enclose it. Now make sure we're going up at 90 degrees, keep it perpendicular. On both sides. And then if we dimension that to be the radius of 2.35, and then use the trim tool, and that should give me a shape that I can extrude 1.75 inches. I'm going to go the other direction. So there's the basic cabin shape, and now I need to do a sketch on the side to cut out this little notch here. Now you'll notice that is a half a circle, but then there's also a flat side off of that half circle. So again, one of the things I failed to mention, but we always want to use, always make sure your sketches are fully constrained. So sometimes it's nice to put a center point on there and dimension that first. That way you know exactly where everything is. That's 1.75 from the bottom and 1/4 inch from the side. So that puts that center point in the right place. And then I'm just going to go ahead and do the circle tool, which will be a 1 inch diameter circle, 0.5 radius. And of course it's a little bit too big, but that's okay. And then next thing I would do, I want to make sure I'm directly above that point and draw a line, keep it tangent, and put it on the next line. And then again do the same thing on the other end. Make sure you have that tangent symbol. Oh, and I lost my point of tangency there. Let's go ahead and add that back on manually using the geometry. And then let's go ahead and enclose that shape. And then let's trim off the parts that we don't want. Now when I did that, I lost my dimension there. Okay, so let's add that back on. It's fully constrained. So then, of course, finish sketch and do a cut extrusion. All the way through. And there's the cutout for the train. Next thing to do, go back around to the front. Now we want to drill some holes. And those holes on the front, you'll notice that, and those holes are very specific. They're 1/8 of an inch above the side, or above the bottom, an inch, 0.375, an inch, 1.625. So those are all positioned there. And then that'll be an 1/8 inch diameter hole, 1/8 of an inch deep, and there's 3 of them that are all the same. So that's how we read that hole note for specifying that. So the easiest way to do that, of course, is let's just put some center points on there. You always want to drill holes as holes. So let's just first put that center point on there and make sure that gets put on in the right place. When you have a hole, you never want to do a hole as an extrusion. You always want to do it as drilling a hole and use the hole feature. And then I'm just eyeballing these. We'll add dimensions in a second here. But that's, and even though that said 1.125 here, you'll notice it wasn't exact. Inventor is a very exact program, so if it's not exactly that number and it's rounding, it won't assemble. And they're each 0.375 from the side, so .125, 0.375 from each side. Okay, now I have 3 purple points. So we'll go ahead and drill the holes. And the holes are 1/8 inch diameter, 1/8 inch deep. We'll go ahead and say OK. Alright, next, let's drill holes for the axles. And you'll notice those holes are 1/4 20. That means they're tapped holes, they're threaded. 1 inch from the back, and from 4.5 inches from the back, 1/2 inch up, and there's 4 of them. So they're 7/8 deep, so that means they're going to be on both sides. So what I'd like to do for that, of course, let's put some center points on again. And again, I'm just randomly eyeballing some points, and now we'll add some dimensions. They're 1/2 inch up. An inch from the back. And 4.5 inches from the back. Okay, and then we use the hole tool. This is a tapped hole. It's 0.875 deep. It's a 1/4 inch, 1/4-20 designation. Going to be threaded full depth, regular UNC coarse threads. That 1/4-20 means 20 threads per inch. That's what that means. Go ahead and say OK, and you'll notice we have those holes. So and we could go ahead and dimension those center points on the other side, but this would be a good time to make use of a mirror and use a work plane. So we have all these different work plane tools, and in this case I want to mirror those holes directly to the other side. So here I want to select a mid-plane between two parallel planes. So then if I select that side of the train and then the other side, that puts a plane in the middle, and then I can make use of the mirror tool. So let's go ahead and select, we want to select the features and then the mirror plane, and then say OK. And you'll notice now I have holes on the other side as well. Okay, now that work plane, if you don't need it anymore, you can't delete it or it will delete your mirror, but if you right click on it in the browser or on the object, you can turn off the visibility of the plane. So now it's kind of grayed out like a sketch that's been used. And then we want to use a work plane again to drill the hole on the top. So now this time we're going to drill, we want to be tangent and parallel to the plane. So I want to pick this edge, and that's going to be parallel to either that plane or plane on the bottom. So now let's go ahead and put a sketch on that plane. And the other thing that's important when you're using work planes, we need to do project geometry. So I want to make sure, I clicked, I did project geometry. Really, that would be enough there for me to do. I just need to make sure I get that hole drilled on the center of the barrel of the train there. So I just need to project enough geometry to get what I want. So of course we'll dimension that. That point is 1 inch from the sides. And 0.875 inches from the front. So now we can select the hole to drill, and again that hole is explained here. It's 1/2 inch diameter, 1/4 inch deep. So we're 1/4 inch deep. Half-inch diameter. Okay, so now we have the train body. Other than we don't have any fillets on it yet. Let's turn off the visibility on that work plane. So you'll notice there is a fillet note about all edges are going to be rounded 0.1 inches except for the holes. Now if you do these fillets in the wrong order, you'll end up with some goofy looking shapes on your train. So let's kind of go through, and you can always it's a good idea to do a few at a time and make sure if you do it to one side, do the other side. The first one I would want to do is that inside there, that rounds off the inside corner, and then those inside corners. And let's go ahead and apply those. You can always come back and add fillets later. You can always do multiple steps. If you try to do all those fillets at once, sometimes you end up with some problems. Let's go ahead and do those small fillets on the back first. Now where's my fillet tool now? There we go. Okay, and now you'll see everything has nice smooth edges on it so that nobody will cut their fingers. Again, I think the only thing I miss now is the bottom. There we go. Okay, so there's the basic train body.